runs. And we thought though we wanted to do functions today, which would have been a very, very nerdy session, we just felt it would be good to just go through analysis and evals once more, and see where people are blocked. And I think we just did a little bit of a collation, and I will just bring up my slides as one must diligently, and then move from there. So welcome to session 6. And so this is how we were thinking of planning today, like review the analysis script to check how it's working for your specific topics, ensure that you're getting your data on your integrations in the dashboard, looking at your bulks, how you can configure them, how you can make them better. I know we've already, like with City team, we met yesterday to look at it a little bit deeper. And then Tom and the Open Up team, you've already been looking at the pricing stuff on eval. And then we have, as we've always been looking at doing a little demo at the end. So we'll do a little demo of how IVR can give you a little SMS summary at the end. And what I did was, maybe I'm going to just share all these. Actually, I've put them here in the Rock Doc. So for every team, I just kind of pulled out your analysis scripts, your dashboards, your Copilot, which, I mean, I took out the one which I saw had the maximum runs. So I'm assuming that those are the ones we've been testing. And wherever I could find the bulk runs, or if I knew that there's a golden data set in the drive, I picked it up from there and I ran a small evaluations for you guys. If you don't have an eval, even if you have a golden Q&A, we can even run it through today right now. But I'll just quickly share with you some things that we've been observing, which have been interesting, and kind of helping us sort of look at how everyone is using the product, and I think we're all just generally excited. So I think we did this together, right, Tom? I think for you guys.
Yeah, we worked on this last week.
Yeah. So
shared session.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe if you want to like dig a little deeper into this unknown category and see why it's kind of moving into that space, or, like refine it a little bit. And then we also saw Tunisia one, which had this really interesting set of stuff coming in from all the tests on the field, I believe, Shadi, that have been happening. So things kind of also showcasing very nicely all the location stuff, Shadi now, and what people are asking about, whether it's vaccinations, doctors, other information, just hellos, and whether the answers have been found or not. And then I also wanted to showcase.
But the only thing I would say is the 100% found is a bit suspicious. And so that's one of those things where we go, that doesn't feel like it's probably giving us the right data, right?
Yeah.
Chances are not every question is 100% found. So it
Yeah.
means that that probably needs to be adjusted.
Yeah. So, and similarly, I think I set it up for Teach for India as well. But I think you guys have two integrations, one on Slack, Nitesh, and one other one. So I wasn't certain if I got the right one. And maybe we want to just like dig a little bit deeper into this. If you prefer to, I don't know how many people from each team have joined, but if you'd like to do it in breakouts, and if that helps you, we can do that. But I think it helps if everyone's around to like learn from each other. And yesterday we also looked at City, where they were getting this really strange piece, Sean, which I don't know if Steve and you guys got a chance to talk, where Mike and Rob found that it would give the name of the mayor always incorrectly, and then they were testing how to get that right. And then finally we found that when we removed Google search entirely, it kind of gave us the right answer. So, and Mike, do you want to bring up a little bit on your evals? I thought they were quite interesting, but I didn't have access to them in the runs.
Can we pause on this one? Because I
Yeah.
actually think there's a lesson here of this sort of conflicting knowledge bases. that oftentimes the places where bugs come in is when there's ambiguity, either in the instructions or in the knowledge base, where, where the data that it's actually getting back may have two answers. And so in this case, given that we had enabled the ability for the bot to search the internet and the ability for the bot to search the knowledge bases that the city of Seattle has provided, that it was basically when it ran the query of who's the mayor, it was basically getting back conflicting pieces of data. And so generally the way to address those is, the blunt instrument is remove one of the sources. But there are other kind of prompting kind of techniques that we could also do and maybe worth exploring for anybody on the City of Seattle side to basically say things like, oh, always prefer the results from your knowledge base. And if you don't get an answer here, then go ahead and do this Google search. And to try to basically massage that prompt thing a little bit if you still want to keep these secondary sources of data. And again, then testing that against your golden questions and then running that to make sure that you're getting consistent answers there too. That's usually the kind of methodology if you want to pull from sort of multiple sources of data simultaneously and kind of have a stack rank associated with it. So,
Yeah.
So I was just curious, how does that get prioritized? So if I think in this case, we had the knowledge base first in the prompt, and then the Google search second. So it felt like it should have prioritized the knowledge base first, and
You're muted, Sean.
and make.
I would think of it less like an order bit and more like
Mm,
in the tool description itself. We would say, hey, call this tool to information here, leverage these search results. And then when you get to the web stuff, I think I would add in a line, which is only utilize the Google search tool if the results do not come back first
mhm,
from the
got
other.
it. Yeah, that makes
And I
sense.
think one of the concerns from the city side that I heard was that they're very, very concerned about inaccurate information being given. And so if the Google search is deployed, that you can prompt it to say, this is not an official Seattle response if it comes from
Yep.
Google, as opposed to if it comes from the knowledge base, it is an official Seattle response.
Yeah,
Something like that.
or the other thing that we've seen with like a Digital Green did this and Opportunity also did it, is in your initial deployment, you may not have the Google search on at all. And then that actually gives you a sense of what types of queries are you getting that are actually going beyond your initial knowledge base. And then you basically just say, I'm sorry, I don't know. We'll get back to you. And then you just start analyzing and categorizing the questions where you gave it, I don't know. And then you just start filling in that part of the knowledge base in kind of real time. And that's a more conservative kind of a way to approach it, especially if in your case, as a city-based institution, you may never want to give information from Google because you can't, go with the veracity. And so I think that would, if I were in your shoes, I would probably start with that approach, which is turn off the Google search entirely, but just make sure you're tracking it and categorizing those queries and then looking at that, especially at the beginning, day in, day out, and then trying to react in real time to the questions people are asking by just literally just updating your knowledge base and hitting refresh on that or keeping like a Google Doc or a Microsoft 365 doc that's just like an additional FAQ where you're just filling in what would be a reasonable answer to this unknown question.
Yeah, I think that's a really good suggestion. It's something that we internally have talked about, and I think that is the approach that we definitely
Yeah.
leaning towards. I think Steve brought up an interesting comment yesterday around like if we chose to provide directions, for example, to a city
Yep.
facility, that we would have to enable a Google search for something like that. But
No. So this one,
uh,
I don't know if the IOM people are here, and so
it,
we
and,
literally have been working on that exact scenario with them, and we'll show you how we solve that problem.
oh, okay, cool.
Essentially,
Yeah,
the answer is you
and
just sort of provide a smart link to the Google Maps, and then they click on that, and that will open Google Maps on their phone, and then allow them to navigate.
got it. Cool. And sorry,
Right.
Steve, if I mischaracterized what I heard.
Oh no, I think that's accurate. I was just using it
Yeah.
as the first example that came in my head.
As an example,
Not just
exactly,
certain.
exactly. Yeah. No, that's
I,
great. Thanks.
I just wanted to point out one more thing, particularly if, for those who are using like their answers expect a hyperlink to go somewhere. The LLMs do have a tendency to make up hyperlinks. So, for example, in this answer, you do see that it hyperlinks to something which says mayor's contact form. But if I go to that link, it's a 404 because mayor slash contact the mayor is not a valid URL. So what I did here is I also added an instruction
The
which
very
says
top.
don't make up the hyperlink. And when I did that, it does take me to the correct uh, hyperlink for the mayor's form. So particularly, I don't know, even maybe Teach for India team or Open Up Teams, if you're using web links where your users might need to end up going, this does tend to happen where it, I don't know, somehow with this great kind of sense of confidence builds these strange hyperlinks. So just kind of be a little bit wary when you're doing your evaluations that if there are hyperlinks in the answer, just check them, check one or two of them, and you'll kind of know whether it's like pointing in the right direction.
And Sean, do you or Ambika, do you want to touch on the clearing the chat history element because we are seeing that in the evaluation as well?
Ambika?
Yeah, okay. All right. So let me give a little bit of context. So here you see that this particular uh, this particular copilot starts with the surprise me, which is actually our base clean slate copilot, and then it goes on to become a little more relevant to the city team. But now it's got a sense of context with many questions which are kind of adding to the memory of that particular chat history. So this can sometimes reflect poorly in your answers. So eventually, when your bot is going to go into more of a production mode and you want to start doing evals, I hope this is the direction you were thinking of, Sean and Steve.
Yep.
Right? So just hit clear, update your bot again, and then use it in the event. So like it should be totally like everything in the settings is as per what you want, but there's no previous conversation that has happened. In particular, we found that with opportunity, Sean, was it that they needed an I agree piece, but then when it went into evals, and if we'd already done an I agree test on the example, it was kind of screwing up for the users, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to recap here, um, when people come in via WhatsApp or SMS or the phone in your integrations, it will ignore what you see here on the right. But when you're running an evaluation, we do allow you to sort of insert an additional sort of prehistory into that conversation, which allows you to basically say, hey, I want to recreate a scenario where the user may have already had 3 or 4 interactions and then is asking the fifth interaction. And so when you're putting this into your evaluator, if you want that to be kind of a virgin conversation with each one of your incoming questions, you should clear this out and then put in that link into your evaluation. If you want it to have a little bit of additional context, as in, they've agreed to something, if you think that's important or whatever else, you basically save it there. And so that's the only distinction. And
Yeah.
and the problem is if you have that additional conversational context, it's considering that when it's giving your answer. And so the future answers will sort of think, oh, for this incoming question, the user might be referring to what they asked just in a previous part. And so that will change the answer that's given. So as a general rule, you can blank that out.
And
Basically, we say that.
to get very specific in this scenario, we were getting the wrong answer and we modified the instructions and we played around with it a little bit until we got the right answer. But in the history, the wrong answer was still there. So then when we ran
Yes.
the evaluation, that wrong answer was still in its memory, and so it gave that wrong answer again.
Yes.
But by clearing it, we were able to get it out. If anybody wants
Right.
the context, Jenny Durkin was our former mayor, and that's what Google was pulling in and giving us the answer. So
I'll
yeah.
just refer back to the chat history if people are I know some of you are following it silently and patiently. So this is what Steve is referring to, right, Steve?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I didn't
kind of
mean
a
to
wrong
derail your agenda.
So
I was just curious along the lines of a wrong answer. So, and maybe this has to do with clearing previous chat, but if I asked it a question that's completely unrelated to the knowledge base and it produced a result, so for example, asking for like a recipe for chocolate chip cookies or something, it and it produced the result, where would that come from? I mean, is it maybe I need to go back and retest that and ensure that the previous conversation was cleared after removing the Google search. I think that's thinking out loud. I think maybe I can retest that. Okay.
Well, there
Maybe
is this
answer that
part
question.
that is a key element for each one of you to decide, which is what is the domain of topics you want your bot to be able to engage the user with? So by default, each one of you is leveraging an LLM model. That LLM model has been trained on the entirety of the internet and will hallucinate answers to everything. So you can ask it about chocolate chip cookies, you can ask it about global politics, you can ask about anything. And unless you put in a little part in your instructions that says, hey, this bot only talks about issues relevant to the city of Seattle, or this bot only talks about health and medical issues, or this bot only talks about education issues, then it will attempt to answer that because by default, it's been trained at the kind of fresh out of the AI foundry to be helpful. So it's always going to try to answer whatever you put to it. And so if you want to restrict it beyond those other domains, you just sort of have to say, hey, if the user wants to talk about topics beyond the subject of education, politely refuse and refer them somewhere else, or whatever that is. And so that's where that chocolate chip cookie thing is coming from, Mike. It's not
Yeah.
coming from your knowledge base. It's not coming from the
Right.
web. It's coming from the LLM's kind of core knowledge of everything.
Yeah.
And in there, you've just said you haven't told it that it's not supposed to talk about chocolate chip cookies, so it's going to try to give an answer.
Yeah. Got it. Perfect.
Other? Go ahead, Amika.
No, funny. I think a little bit of an open session today, but yeah, so maybe I'll just quickly show. I did a little bit of evaluation test for IOM, and it may be relevant to Teach for India eventually if you do languages. And I'll just give you a sense of how we can do language evaluations before we do Copilot evaluations, if that is a need. And then
Yeah, this will be relevant, I think, to at least half the folks that are dealing with,
oh yeah,
non-English
okay.
evaluations.
Yeah. So right. Okay, so sorry, I think I should just go to the saved. Maybe that's right. So I believe Shadi explained to me that there'll be a number of languages that will come into their Copilot because obviously they're working with immigrants and refugees from different parts who are coming into Tunisia. So I did a small test with just three data points for Shadi. Is this Bambara? Am I pronouncing
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
We tried Bambara and Susu,
Yeah.
two local languages used
Yeah.
in West Africa.
So if you notice, we've got the audio file, which is just a Google Drive link. Then we've got the question in English. It was also there in French, but I have not added that to how this evaluator works. And if you notice, we don't have a Copilot builder run here. We have a speech recognition run here. So the idea is that before we do like a long drawn evaluation on a Copilot, you first kind of choose which language model works for you the best. So if I go here to the language model, which is this Gooey.AI/speech, and I add an audio file, I can, through the filters, just type Bambara. And then all the speech to text providers we've got, which support Bambara, will turn up. So of course here it's only the Facebook MMS model. And then you can add a translator model so that once it's transcribed, it is also translated for the LLM. So so the translation models, there were three that show up. Why it's not showing, but which it works with Vula and Google and Ghana NLP. So I just wanted to do a bunch of tests on how it's running across all of these. So two parts that are happening. That first, it is recognizing the audio. This is actually just an MP3 which Shadi gave us in the Bambara language, and then it transcribes that in the local language, and then it translates it into English, and then does a comparison. So I mean, it's done some transcriptions, but I am not certain if this is the script, because of course I don't know the language. So obviously these translations and these transcriptions and translations are not working so well. So here you can see we did one with Google. There was one with, this one is with Ghana NLP. So this is totally kind of failed. And then the last one, which turns up here, is with the Vula model, which translates it. But obviously you can see it's not doing such a great job here. It's just saying, and then it went into this kind of manic transcription. And here also it's kind of translated it incorrectly. So we are basically testing which model will work the best with our Copilot if we want to make sure that Bambara is supported within the Copilot. And then obviously it's like currently with Ghana NLP and Hula Hula, it looks pretty bad. But at least with the Google translation model, it's about 0.3% or something like that. Sorry, you have a question, Shadi?
No, that was great. Just I wanted to add that Bambara language is spelled in Latin letters, either like French English, you know. So
Okay. Yeah, so obviously
that's
this
it.
this particular model is a total, like, we have to kind of check what will work best. And then I also did one saved piece for your Copilot. So currently, IOM is testing the Copilot not in the local languages, but rather I think in French. But I also just wanted to, because we are doing so many languages, and it was kind of I think I'll say it. It was, for me also, it was feeling a bit overwhelming. So I thought, okay, let's at least check if the English Q&A is working well enough based on two co-pilots. One, I think Sean built, which is being tested in the field, and the other one, which I think currently Shadi is experimenting with on his own. And I just added about 6 questions, and these were the golden answers that were already there. And then the evaluations kind of already show you where it's working and where it's failing. So now at least you can do your full tests in English for like number of questions. You can like load it now with 10, 20, 50, 100 even. So we can know how well the field test at least is working in English. And then we will like split it out into how it's working with language. So I felt like, Sean, I felt like this approach might work well for them because it's so heavily
Yes.
multilingual that at least we know, okay, where are the bits we need to debug and improve, rather than trying to run it as a whole big piece.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that in terms of starting, especially for knowledge-based testing, you definitely want to start with a sort of golden questions and answers in English, and then make sure that we get to a confidence level where it's answering those things well at sort of this 0.8 or above level for all of them. And then, there's a bit of sort of script and knowledge-based revision on that. And then we'll layer in, okay, once you start to include the transcription, translation, and TTS issues, then kind of get into that additional level there. But sequentially, that allows you to kind of like do it in steps that will basically make your life easier. The other thing that I will say Yeah, and we can do a session for like a smaller set of folks that want to go deep into kind of language evaluation. Is I've often found that in case of like Bambara, that you may end up leaning into languages that are kind of regionally or linguistically similar, right, to it. So like Mali, which may be supported in a variety of other models, but Bambara isn't. And so there might be, we've seen that sometimes if you tell one of the other language models, hey, this is in Mali, that it'll suddenly do better on Bambara because it's so similar. And so it's worth doing the work to kind of set that up. The other thing that is happening is there all the time, like just like new LLMs are coming out all the time, new speech recognition models are coming out all the time. And so sometime in the next 2 weeks, we'll support another 100 languages from 11 labs, which is pretty good. And then in particular, also the latest round of all of the Gemini based speech recognition models are in there too. So on that one, I would say in preparation for that session, if you guys can bring together like, here's my audio samples, here's the language they're in, here's the transcription, here's the translation into English, and begin to prepare that data set, then we can do a session to say, okay, given everything we know about the kind of state of the art on all of these models, this is how to set up the evaluations and kind of if the direct language you need isn't supported, here's maybe the best proxy language to use to hint to the models, and then we'll find the one that actually works best. Like, yeah. And so I have found, as I said, like MMS is great, but it's old and it doesn't translate. And then some of the newer models of like, Gemini 4 or GPT-4o, Claude, and Gemini are really great at a broad swath and then get better if you give them some hints. So we'll do a specific session on that. I think there's 3 folks here that are really interested in the language piece, but we'll go a little deeper on that.
Yeah,
And then I sent a little link here, which is, some more documentation of like how to set up these golden evals too on languages.
thanks, John. And then finally, I think, let me just see where we are.
Can I just ask one more quick question? Sorry to
Yeah.
too long talking about languages. Does it help if I'm getting the Bambara or any other language like Susu spelled in English or like Latin letters in the table? Does it help the model better understanding, or
I mean,
it's not the
generally,
case?
you should assume for low resource languages, we're probably going to have to do a translation pass rather than have the LLM handle it directly as it does for English, Spanish, or French. And so what we're really evaluating against is often the English golden translation that you're providing. So it's helpful to provide the transcription, but at the end of the day, we're going to be evaluating against how well does these other speech recognition plus translation models ultimately yield the same semantic meaning English text when given this audio file as your golden translation.
Got it. Awesome.
Um, so yeah, I mean, before we dig into the next piece, I just also wanted to mention here that I don't know which teams are not here on the call, but I think TFI team, I couldn't find your golden eval in the folder, though I remember on an earlier call, you have already prepared that doc. So perhaps if maybe we can sync on an Indian time for that, I can help you guys out on it, Nitesh.
Sure, Ambika. I actually just got a chance to run the eval today evening, so I can actually share the link with you and you can help me review,
Excellent.
but we'll block a
Excellent.
separate
Yeah,
time.
because I do remember you had shown that you had made a doc, and then I just couldn't
Yeah.
find it, so thought maybe I'll ask you guys. Okay.
Sure.
And then I wanted to show Tom what you've been doing. Like that was pretty fantastic. Where I already like looked at how I think was it on pricing and how 2 copilots are working.
Yes, comparing multiple copilots with price and runtime. I added runtime in there too.
Was it this one?
I can send the link that I'm on if you want to see it.
Yeah, that would be.
Find it.
Is this the one?
Yes, looks like it.
Yeah, price and
Mhm.
so I think this is like a great example of is it exactly the same Copilot which is running on these three models, right? I don't think there's any change in the settings except for the model.
Yeah, it was just changing the model. Yeah, it was only
Yeah,
changing the
so
model.
so here we 4.1, 4.1 mini, and the last one is I think 4.0, right? And then so basically if you just go down generally for everyone, I mean maybe Tom, I think maybe you'd like to talk about it and your experience. Is that okay, Sean? I think it might
Sure.
give us some feedback
Yeah,
on
go
the
ahead. Yeah,
user
please.
experience as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wasn't sure. So what I ended up doing, and I'm not sure if this was the way to do it or not, was I ended up duplicating my original assistant a couple times and changing the LLM in the duplicates and then updating them and renaming them. So then when I came to this eval tool, I was able to pick all three of the copilots that I wanted to compare. And then in the thing that I found under the show all column, so initially it just outputs the text and the run URL, but I wanted to compare some different things. So I added in price and runtime because I'm just curious about how the pricing for different things will compare, and then also how how that particular LLM scores, lower price but worse score kind of thing. So that was the thought behind running the experiment, and I did a bunch of these, but yeah, that's where I ended up. And then I ran it a few times. It was pretty easy to see the pricing in the aggregate mean section of the display, and also the compare score pretty quickly.
So GPT-4o is an older, more expensive one, so it seemed to be more. Seems like
Yeah, GPT-4o was
mini
older
one.
and more. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It actually is not surprising. But this,
Yeah, mini was okay. Actually, I was trying to run mini and nano,
yeah,
just to see if I could like reduce the load on that, because if we're gonna depend on our source content primarily, like so. But at least so far, what I didn't do, which I could do next, is like try to tweak the prompts of those copies to see if I can get better answers for the ones that have lower pricing. But I also
yeah.
this one.
Go
I
ahead.
was also trying to test out Gemini, or I didn't test out Gemini yet, but like testing out other LLM providers too.
So
Yeah. So the only go ahead, Ambika.
I think Sean, maybe we're saying the same thing, so I'll let you say.
Well, I was just saying the whole world is investing dramatically in AI, right? And especially these large model makers. And they are in a tremendously competitive market. And so one of the reasons that we pushed the pricing optimization to the very end is they are going down in price every quarter. And there are competitors that are coming up in terms of capability every quarter too. And so I still would encourage you guys for the time being to work on what are the models that have the right kind of accuracy and speed that you need to basically give the answers that you want and get to the point where that's really good. And then push the price optimization later because what you may be optimizing for now may be totally different in 4 months. And hence the work will kind of be wasted and you'll have to redo it anyways. And so I wouldn't worry too much about cost right now of conversations. I would worry about, are you making something that's giving people what they want in a way that you can prove it has retention?
Yep.
And then we'll do the optimization once we've sort of proven what we've created product market fit to make it cheaper. And there are other techniques that we can do that we'll get into that as well. And so I wouldn't worry tremendously about it right now. We'll get into it later.
And then my one feedback for you guys is like, there's
Yeah.
not an easy way to see the runtime in an aggregate on a
Yes.
graph.
Yes. Yeah, we know that obviously you should be able to see performance, runtime, and price in some reasonable view, and that reasonable view doesn't exist yet, other than being buried in these tables. And so that's work that we need to do to fix.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that please don't be alarmed at that the compare answers are so ranked. So it's just that it just took all of these and made the chart. But like this is just the answer piece, and then these are just for the pricing. So they're just different, and I think the colors also got reflected in the same way. So I think Tom, you'd brought that up in the chat as well.
Yeah.
So
Most expensive one was green. That threw me up.
Yes. It doesn't, yeah, which makes sense for other things, but not for this one.
Yep.
So yeah, so I mean, right now we are way more optimized on like checking answers, and I think this sometimes gets a bit carried away, shall we say? But I did it really be. I don't know if Tom, if you've had a chance to speak with your SME team, because I think your team always turns up, and like how have they been liking the answers just in general? Like where can we fix the prompt in a way that it brings it out to be a little bit more engaging for the end user? Because sometimes I find the golden answers a bit smaller, and then these answers tend to be like really lengthy. So I don't know what works for you guys.
There's so a couple of things. I think and I think Peter was talking about this in the very beginning, like we're going to really dig in a lot more once we get everything in via the web, because I think that will, instead of relying on the JSON representation of one lesson and then the PDFs of everything else, I think having everything in a similar format that we will use moving forward, we'll be able to evaluate better like what we need to do to tweak the prompts and things like that. So while we were doing that, I was running this kind of analysis just to see if there were LLMs that performed better with what we knew as a starting.
Yeah. Right. Okay, I think Sean, I wanted to just do the demo for the phone thing, but is there anything, do people have some questions?
Before we get there, I can share this. We'll go into this more next week, but maybe I'll give you a teaser, which is Shadi came to us with this problem of, hey, I've got 3,000 healthcare clinic locations in a big Google sheet, all over Tunisia. Given a location of somebody, how do I determine what, ideally we're showing this healthcare location to each one of them. And so what we'll do a little bit for next week is sort of walk through like how we did that. And it's more straightforward than you think it is. In its essence, we took this data, exported it to like a big, just a TSV, which is like a CSV. It's just an Excel sheet, and then wrote a little function that searches for that and then returns, right, given the location that we get from WhatsApp, what are the nearest for healthcare clinics. And you'll see this is the sort of description of the data about each one. And I guess I'm bringing this up, Peter or Mike, you mentioned that, there are city offices that are similar that, I can imagine you guys also want to give. And so in short, there's just a big, if you can imagine, like database that takes in a location and then returns the lat long and name of this health facility. And so this is the data that the bot gets back. And then when we're using the tools, we literally just added this little thing, which is whenever the user wants to find nearby clinics, ask them for their location, and then use the clinic search tool to provide the user with answers, and then provide the info about each nearby clinic. And then we said, hey, give them a map link, and then it encoded it in this pattern, which is Google Map search, query name is then city name, government, Tunisia. And the thing that you get there is you then get a map link that's sort of built from the data that you have. And then the advantage is if you click on this link, Google does the right thing and will just go get that particular place. And then they can navigate there. And so, Mike, this is the pattern. So rather than notice we didn't do a Google search to figure out this particular place. We just returned a Google Maps link that people can use and then immediately say directions.
Perfect.
That's it. So that's the kind of, and as you can see, it's all about doing a little bit of work in this prompt. And so we just basically, went and figured out, okay, how do you give Google Maps a URL where you want it to go find it? And then we're basically appending this little API 1 and then constructing the query for it. And then, we're sort of referencing in a loose way the data objects that we're getting back here. And the advantage is then suddenly, if somebody then taps in their WhatsApp location and they literally just hit send location in Tunisia case, we're sending them the 4 closest clinics, right? And then they can go and figure out how to get there if they have data on their phone, which with WhatsApp, we're streaming video. So, but we'll dive more into this one when we do the functions one, but this is one of the demos we wanted to queue up. And
So
then I think the next
you-
demo, go ahead.
I'm not a spatial guy, and so this might be a question that's not appropriate, but could you provide like a block or a shape or something in kind of a response to that? I mean, is that or is that more of a Google question?
You could.
I'm trying to
In
think of
general, you don't
trying to
need
think of a
to.
use case, and it might again be inappropriate, but I was just popped in
I
my
mean,
head.
there are some we do deal with blocks for like agricultural parts when trying to calculate the size of someone's plot, right?
Yeah.
Or farmland, where basically we ask them to go to the 4 rough corners of their
Yeah,
field, right?
exactly.
And so I can imagine for sort of loose surveying type of things that you want to do,
Mhm.
like we do that, but in general, a single point is probably fine, right?
Mhm.
But anyways, for none of the cases you guys have here, do I think you need to deal with that? But
Yeah, I think I don't know where this would come into play, we do think of locations in those blocks when it comes to public safety response or
okay.
like but again, I'm trying to imagine on the fly what the use cases might be.
So
But
that's
there are,
slightly different. So I think
yeah.
what you're saying is if somebody comes in and they're in one of our blocks here, they should get back services from this place, right?
Yeah, that's
And
another
so I
interesting.
think
Yeah,
that's on your search algorithm side rather than in the LLM side.
got it. Yep. Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Other questions before we get to the demo? Then we're kind of jumping around, but we wanted to kind of review some of the interesting stuff that's happened in the last week. Okay. Do you want to show the demo of the SMS stuff, Ambika?
Yeah, that'd be good. Actually, I will share it a little more in not just in context of the fact that it's a fun demo, but also like this is like how things can very easily be chained across GUI tools, which can sometimes it's like just like to wrap your heads around it. We'll just test it and then I'll explain to you how it's happening. But in general, like the context is that you've had a call with the city of Seattle. We've seen those demos in the past sessions, but now you want to send an SMS out to them that, hey, this is a summary of your conversation for whatever follow-ups you might need. So I will call the number again on my phone and hopefully I can show you what I mean. So let me know if you can hear it.
Hi, I'm Seymour.
Yeah.
I can connect you to city offices and answer common questions. If this is an emergency, please contact 911. How can I help you today?
Hi, I want to connect to the permits department because I want to do a block party and there needs to be a big banner that shares that there's going to be a block party.
To organize a block party and share a banner, you'll need to contact.
So you can already see it's coming up here in the history.
At 206-684-8600 for permit information. Would you like me to transfer your call?
Not yet. Let me know what are the steps. Do I need to fill any forms out?
To organize a block party, you typically need to follow these steps. 1. Fill out a special events permit application from the Department of Construction and Inspection. 2. Notify your neighbors and gather signatures if required. 3. Plan for street closure if necessary and coordinate with local authorities. 4. Ensure safety measures and cleanup plans are in place. 5. Submit the application and any
Oh, it's a
required
bit
fees.
long. Sorry, guys. Okay, that sounds good. I think I'm done. Can you please connect me to the construction department?
Sure. Connecting you to the Department of... Hello. Cisco Unity connection messaging system.
Okay, so it's transferred me. So now our call is over. And now you can see that it's kind of built this function out, which is done the transcription of the entire call, including wherever I kind of paused awkwardly. And I'll just show you, I think this might work. So here you can see I've got a summary of the message and the conversation that I had, that it says that, okay, so it allows you to follow up in context of, whatever else you wanted to do, and you just get the summary. And the way it works is quite interesting. I think I know some of you are like me and would love to nerd out. So I'm just going to share how that happens. I was really excited also when I understood how it works. So what we've done basically here is in the integrations, we've hooked up another analysis script, which is actually not making any of those charts, but is actually a function, which is a sandboxed function. Which is the first part of it is it makes gets that transcript from the call, and it summarizes it, and it makes this little JSON from that summary, and it pushes this out to Twilio or whatever the service you might end up using for the broadcast message. So, and then it goes to the next tool, which is a functions tool, which we'll do in the next session, where it receives that entire chunk of the object, and it pushes it to Twilio, and it gives that particular user, whatever their number might be, that particular SMS as the body of that message. So this
And
is
the idea is you should not have to change this. This is
yeah.
like hardcore code, right? And the part that's interesting is if you go back to the previous one, Umpika, that you definitely might want to adjust is the script that's saying how should a conversation be summarized into a text message, right? And so clearly I feel like some of the main details here were not captured, right? Like what's the telephone number? What were those 5 steps? And so we'll need to adjust this prompt a little bit to make sure that we're giving summaries that are actionable and interesting. But this is the place where basically you can then make that happen and then just lean in on the function that's already been done, which then knows how to, send SMSs.
Yeah, so I mean, in context, this is very direct, of course, for IVR, but I think, maybe, I don't know, like, I think, was it Tom or Dan, you guys were talking about something in the group about the UDP stuff. So I don't know, maybe there's an opportunity to look at functions as a space where we can pull in that data and like push it back to the end user as we require. And all that can all be done within the existing workflows that GUI offers, like just by virtue of chaining them in the right places, and getting the best out of the LLM as much as we can. Sean, I don't know if you think is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, no, the only thing I would just add is we're just trying to show here how it's often useful to run a little bit of extra code either before your stuff runs in a given interaction or after it. Like if you want to store stuff to a log, if you want to to use an LLM to basically create structured data or to categorize that. And then it's pretty flexible that, you can not only just store that to your database to make a dashboard type of thing that we've seen, but if you want, you can then call anything else and make other, kind of calls to the rest of the world. And so that was just an example here of, doing that in SMS. And, as we were kind of walking through and thinking through these telephone scenarios, it's usually true that at the end of any given call, you want an SMS that sort of summarizes the call and allows you to kind of move forward with that. And so we figured that's going to be useful to you guys at the city of Seattle, and it's probably going to be useful to everybody else that wants to do anything with making IVR-based bots. So we sort of did the work to kind of build that out.
That's
Yeah,
cool. So that's
so
that code snippet is coming from that function that you built and is kind of, I guess, available in as we're selecting and building that out. Got it. Okay,
Yes.
cool.
And then, you can modify and fork that to your heart's content and then use it however you want.
Sure. Okay. Great.
And frankly, for a lot of these code snippets, let's be super clear. Those are just us doing small experiments with ChatGPT to say, hey, here's the input that we like, here's the output. Please write this 20 lines of JavaScript code. And then we test it, and it's usually pretty good. Right. And so the speed at which you can then make that gets pretty fast too. Because usually it's just talking to some REST API that has a set of inputs and a set of outputs.
So yeah, I mean, I just wanted to share this also as a precursor for some of you who may really like be using functions and the agentic stuff. So for in those contexts, I think just because we have like another 6 minutes, in those contexts, we have these two pieces where what Sean has said, that there are lots of existing examples of code that you can directly use without having to like really fuss at all. You just maybe need to change an API key. Whereas, you want to do something super specific, then you can really dig deeper into figuring that out for yourselves as well. So hopefully that supports both kinds of people, those who want to really like do the code piece themselves versus those who may not have that expertise internally and can then just plug into the existing examples with a bit of, poking around. So we have about 5 more minutes if someone has something that they'd like to share or add or ask.
So I'm thinking this might be a good function with would likely be a good approach for generating like a Google Doc from like a response that contains sample practice problems. As long as we can like include the authentication piece somehow, and I'm not sure how that's going to work. But
there's a secrets framework, so they're encrypted and stored just with your workspace inside of Azure. So you can basically add in secrets that are only available to your team. They're not available to us, which then allows you to call anything you want.
Well, I'm thinking of the like user OAuth 2 workflow where they would have to, like, if I want, if I'm a user and I want to have the AI bot create a doc in my Google workspace, then I'm going to have to authorize it using the OAuth workflow. But I think they do have a JavaScript version of that pops up the right windows. So
that one I'm not as familiar with. We might have to go a little deeper. One thing that is coming down the pipe that's just fun, but is a kind of wonderful example, and we'll kind of end on this. And you guys, we've been playing with this, and as I mentioned, we have a new set of kind of image models that are really quite powerful. And so especially in the education space, and I'm even thinking in some of the healthcare spaces, it could be interesting. We'll show you kind of what we mean, and then we'll send the link to this. This is a little bit outside of what we normally have here, but it's just like so fun that I kind of had to do it. So, you can now make images inside of these things at a level of fidelity that is kind of incredible, which is, what we're seeing here is we're saying create a photorealistic image of Harry Potter and Hermione, and then include all of these words like magic carpet loading, unloading, reindeer parking, or permit only. And so your ability to create text in the images really gets amazing. And so from that, you can also then do things like, say, hey, I want to create a menu and here's all of the text inside of it and the drawings that are associated with this. And so you can imagine suddenly the ability to say, we want to create a fraction that is relevant to a particular student and the problem that they had, and then to go ahead and render it. And so this is sort of a new capability that I think could be quite interesting for making diagrams. And then, in particular around educational pieces, or even some basic healthcare practices and like other guidance that we want to give. So anyways, that's one of the things that's in there. The other thing that we do want to cover for next time that we are be thinking a lot about is this idea of meta prompting, which is basically for you guys to be able to just say, hey, I want to do this. And then rather than you have to go in and write all of those LLM prompts, which is its own science, right? There's something that's kind of coming in and helping you do that, ideally informed by the feedback that you are giving on your golden Q&A and that bulk evaluation. And so you saw there's a little bit of chatter on that. We're not quite ready to talk about that one yet, but that's coming. And so those are tools that basically should allow you to just hit go and then things just get better, right? Without you needing to, get into the weeds quite so much. So know that that's coming down the pipe in our
So
vision
in
of
this
keep abstracting up. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
quick question, when this rolls into production, are we storing the conversation? Are we storing the question and then what's generated as the response somewhere so that if we ever had to go back and retrieve that, for some kind of public disclosure, is that something that we'll talk about or?
Yeah, there's a right now that is stored, and there's a bunch of privacy knobs that we can pull around that.
Uh-huh.
In terms of there's things that you can do to delete that immediately afterwards, because for some scenarios, especially related to healthcare, the PII
Yeah.
data that's associated there is really sensitive, and we don't want it staying around. There are other scenarios where maybe you want to delete that from our servers, but you want to log that on your own virtual private
Mhm.
servers. This is where these kind of post calls come in from a public disclosure perspective.
Mhm.
And so we can do a session on that. There's a
Okay.
wide variety of things that are possible there, and it does depend on use case, frankly. Um,
Got it. Okay.
yeah. So, and then there are even scenarios where you say, listen, we're not comfortable with GUI, Google, or OpenAI knowing any of this. We want to run this on our own servers on-prem. And so we're working with like folks that are doing like suicide prevention hotlines that are trying to do analysis of that. So like the data is so sensitive that it really never wants to leave their servers. And there's other kind of technically more involved ways to make that happen, where essentially you're running a bunch of the GUI code on their own servers. Um, and there's trade-offs there, right? But anyways, we can talk about that if we want a session on that.
Great. Yeah.
But that is important, and it's sort of use case dependent.
Great.
Yeah, short answer, Mike, I know you guys have public disclosure requirements. It might be best just to port the transcripts over to your own database where you manage it and you
Yeah.
control deletion timeframes and whatnot.
Got it. Yep. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, I think a separate discussion on that would be really helpful at some point. Mhm.
Yeah, and then there's also like chains of trust. Like we have relationships of data providers, like with OpenAI and Google and Anthropic, right? To make sure that from an auditing perspective, like we're proving we're compliant, we're proving that our providers are compliant, et cetera.
Got it. Great.
Two questions in the chat. One is curious about dialect and accent for non-natives, because do you mean in the generated text, or do you mean when they with the speech recognition?
The speech recognition. Thank you, Amrita.
I think in the language section we may have mentioned it,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
yeah,
let's do a deeper dive on that,
yeah.
Shadi, in terms
No
of,
problem.
the answer is there's many models out there and they're all kind of different. And so it's really about you guys trying to get a data set of audio files that you think are going to be representative of the problems and the people you want to understand, and then testing the hell out of that every week to see who's understanding them best. And then Peter, do we provide an interface to see their own conversations? In general, if they did it in WhatsApp, they can see it in WhatsApp. If they did it in SMS, they're seeing it in SMS. We don't provide another way for them to log in and see their stuff. We do that for you as the bot creator, but the users generally are just going to be able to see whatever they've got in the channel that they've got. In the web widget, we do store that in the history, and so you can see that if it pops up there. You can disable that if you wish to. There are some scenarios where you might want to.
I'll just show you in the web widget because that may not be so obvious. Like, oh, they don't have. Sorry. So this will have all of it, like pretty much like ChatGPT. If that session is still open, they'll have all of the history.
And then
There's
I
no
think if you scroll
persistence to
down,
those sessions.
yes,
on
okay. That device. We're just using the local cache of the browser to save it.
All right.
Okay, I think we're 4 minutes over. We're available. We want to see more progress. We're super excited to see this get to more real users and then begin to connect it to each of your KPIs. And so thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Amrita.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Sean?
Yeah.
I just when we were on the beginning of the
Stop the
call.
recording.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
Stop. I think Peter set up some time.